take your privacy very seriously. Yes, I'm speaking to you looking at me. Take your privacy very seriously. You don't have to post every single thing that happens to you on social media. Limit what you put out there. Be in control of your information. Don't post anything about your personal life if it's not necessary, if you're not a public figure. Even if you're a public figure, you still should be able to know what you post. Don't put things there about your children. You have the dark web, they harvest data. They use those children's data for different obscene things that you don't want to think about. Be careful. Think before you put any personal data into training models. Also, apart from personal data, those that work in different organizations as well, be careful when you put in your business information into these training models as well. Because the truth of the matter is this: without you knowing, a breach may have been committed.
Hey everyone, quick question. Have you liked this video yet? If not, smash that like button for me. And while you're at it, if you're not already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and join the family. It really helps the channel out. And don't forget to drop a comment below. I love hearing from you and what you want to see next.
Okay, my name is Ifelanwa Ajayi Falana. I'm a dual qualified lawyer. I'm a solicitor here in the United Kingdom. And at the moment I specialize in information governance, data protection, AI, and cyber diplomacy as well. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me here. Yeah, that's something little about me. That's a very good question, and the simple answer to both is yes. Yes, it may be a genuine, compliance and also a box-ticking exercise. Organizations that are really, genuine about this, you would see this in the way the executive, senior leadership, board level incorporate, data protection and privacy into their business decisions. You see it in the culture of the organization as well, with the people, how they practice, data protection, how they incorporate the legislation into all of their day-to-day jobs. Meanwhile, from some organizations, just for them to tick the box, they just want to have the policies in place, they want to have the certifications, and that's it, because they have this belief that they've not been caught yet. And it's until an incident, a major incident happens, and that's when they start running helter-skelter, which is really unfortunate. And I think my answer would also be that people or organizations, so when I say people, individuals as well, should be proactive rather than being reactive. Right, so the false belief is, we'll never be caught, really. Regulators will not catch us, so they just keep on, carrying on like as if they will not be caught. So they don't put the things that they need to put in place. There's no proper governance, there's no proper accountability. They don't put every security measures and safeguards that should be in place. No risk assessment is taken. And again, when I want to express myself, obviously we're in Expressions by Raphael, and this is just my own opinion here. Organizations need to make sure that it's from the top to the bottom, especially when it comes to data protection, information governance, risks, legal, and things like that. Because when you have the board on board, that's quite funny. But when you have them on board, it makes it easier for this to be cascaded down to every part of the organization. But when you don't have the executive or senior leadership on board, it makes it really difficult for the organization to have good practice and best practices. So that's the first step. So that false belief is when they have documentation in place, especially. So they have their policies in place, you have your privacy notices, you have the certifications. For example, you are ISO qualified, you have, things just for you to tick the box from a legal perspective. But when auditors do come around into organizations to carry out, external audits or even internal audits if you, employ the service of an external consultant. Nowadays, they're not satisfied with just looking at documentation. They want to sit down and interview different employees within the organizations, within different units. And when they speak to those people, that's when they understand, the practices of the organization. So really, the false belief that organizations just feel like, oh, I have documentation in place, let me just have this in place, and then everything just goes smoothly. That will not happen when a major incident, occurs. Obviously, we all know the story of Marks and Spencer when everything broke loose. Even organizations that seem to have things in place, sometimes the minutest of things that are cost them to be an oversight ends up, bringing about reputational damage. Trust is breached, and a whole lot, to be honest, that sometimes they are not able to recover from. This is another very, very brilliant question. I think, honestly, it is uneven. To a certain extent, it may, be a deterrent. But when we look at large organizations, especially when we look at the law, legislation says that it should be 4%, of your global return, which should be the fine. Nowadays, organizations in their plan and budgeting for the years ahead, it's the costs that they've absorbed, and more often than not, large organizations survive from those heavy costs. And when you look at small or medium-sized enterprises, they suffer a lot when it comes to that kind of penalty. So it may be a deterrent for them. But because large organizations have the financial resources, they have the human resources, so it's easier for them to be able to absorb it. Now, what makes it more of a deterrent for large organizations is not really about the fines. Maybe in one regard, it may be if the fine becomes repetitive, so they're being fined repeatedly, over different things, and then the gross monetary, payment towards the regulator becomes huge. Then obviously that may shake the organization a bit, but it's really more than that. When you look at the reputational harm it does to the name of the organization, to the business, the trust is, customer trust becomes zero. What happens is that obviously if you are affected and, for example, your data has been breached and you're not carried along and they're not being transparent and fair and open with you, you lose trust. You tell your family members, you tell your friends, you go onto social media, it becomes a really, really terrible social media negative campaign. And then obviously you can have corrective orders, and it doesn't stop there. You also think of litigation. When we talk about litigation, obviously civil litigation, and nowadays, especially in the UK, you have what we call class action, where you have so many people coming together under an umbrella to sue an organization that has fallen short of this. So it's beyond just the fines. Yes, it could be a deterrent for maybe smaller and mid-sized organizations, but in addition to that, for large organizations, all these things that I've listed is also something that they would suffer from if they don't carry out their due diligence and also adhere to legislation. That's very interesting, and unfortunately, it still happens, and I think it probably will continue to happen until there is, some form of blanket, way of monitoring this. I think number one, the truth of the matter is that storage is easier for organizations. It's cheaper for them instead of them having to think of how they're going to expunge the data, which may be time consuming. Time is very precious. Time is expensive. So organizations just want to keep the data in-house. Number two, it's very laborious. It takes a lot of effort to say you want to delete data, because what happens is that first of all, you need to understand what data you have or you hold, where is the data stored, and then obviously start looking at the data, and that requires effort. It's not just about you collecting the data. Deletion takes a whole lot of time, doing what type of data it is, for what purpose was collected, and things like that. Also, sometimes depending on what the data was used for, some departments or units would not want to delete the data for fear of them wanting to need the data again, or perhaps they may need or require that data to be used for some research or for some purpose in the future. And I think another main reason as well is, prior to all this due diligence and all this deletion and holding of data for longer than required, we still have what we call legacy systems. So these are systems that have been in place prior to us being so data protection regulated now. And the data stored on those legacy systems, if people need, organizations need to have access to them and begin to unlock them and begin to, try and separate them and try and delete them, it's going to take a lot of human resources. It may even need organizations externally, giving it out to third-party contractors to deal with, which will involve money, lots of money. So I think all of that is the cost, the time that makes that happen. And sometimes when it comes to over collection, the truth of the matter is, if you're not transparent with data subjects are you and I, people that organizations hold data on and about. If they're not transparent with them, if, for example, you say you want to collect my data because you want to carry out a telephone interview with me or a survey with me, and you say that it's just for the purpose of that particular survey, I believe that you've collected that data for that purpose. But really, what actually happens if I don't follow up to confirm from you if you've actually deleted the data? So sometimes, because there's no follow-up from data subjects as well, organizations just hold that data. They can use it and use it and use it, which is wrong. So the law is there. And I think lastly, another thing is retention periods. Organizations should know that they have retention periods for data, but sometimes organizations don't adhere to it. So some may be 6 months, 12 months, 6 years, depending on the type of data and for the purpose, because you must have a lawful basis for processing data. So if you don't act within that, then you're in breach of the law. So yeah, that's the reason. I will say yes to both questions. Data protection claims can indeed be complex, and also yes to the fact that people do not read the notices, and they just say yes to it, which makes it also difficult as well, being a reason why it can be. It can be complex simply because of the fact that we have so many legislations all over the world. There's no blanket legislation that covers data protection or, anything associated with, managing data and governing data. For example, in the United Kingdom alone, we have the Data Protection Act 2018. We have the UK GDPR, which is carved out from the EU GDPR. And then very recently, the enacted act that came into force last year, 2025, the DUA, which is the Data Use and Access Act. So within the UK alone, we have those general legislation. And then we have sector-specific legislation as well within UK. We move to the EU, you have so many legislation. You have the EU GDPR, we have the EU AI Act, which just recently came into force as well, which is still evolving. Then you move on to US. US is so fragmented. We have different states in US and you have different state laws as well. You go into Asia, you have China, you have Korea. You look at Australia, you look at Africa. So all over the world is so fragmented. Every jurisdiction has its own, law and act and guidance and everything. So it makes it really, really complex, especially where you have cross-border data transfers as well, where you have international data transfers, where people don't even think about, or the organizations don't think about the safeguards that need to be put in place. For example, between EU and UK, we have the adequacy decision that allows us to be able to transfer data from UK to EU and EU to UK. Meanwhile, if you're going to transfer such data with other third-party countries, you need to be thinking of your standard contractual clauses, you need to be thinking of your binding corporate rules, international data transfer agreements where required and everything. So it can be complex. Now, what happens is that large organizations can afford to manage those complexities because they are financially buoyant. So they have the financial resources, they have the human resources, so they have the legal capability to be able to manage that. Now, when it comes to small organizations, they may not be able to do this. Now, on the other side, when it comes to people not reading, the policies and just ticking, everyone is a culprit, even including myself. Yeah, like I cannot be bogged, with reading all of this. But the truth of the matter is this. If, for example, you are sent a 300-page document or policy or a 6,000-page policy, no one is going to sit down to read that. And I want to believe that the courts are very, very realistic, and they look at the evidence and the circumstances, and you cannot say that consent has been freely given or was specific when you have a 300-page or 6,000-page document for an individual to go through. No one has that time. And it just then reveals that the organization is making it a box-ticking exercise rather than ensuring that it's freely given, and it's freely received as well. So in as much as organizations may have privacy notices, they may have, those documentation in place for you and I to read and say, yeah, agree. It still does not, make it easy for any organization to say that, oh, well, you've agreed to this, so that means that we're free. No, the courts will look at everything holistically, and they will look at the evidence as well. So yes, both of them are complex in terms of data protection claims.
Do you find this video very interesting? Then give it a like, share it to others, then hit the subscribe button and make sure you turn on your notification. Then let's go back to the video.
With the way technology is rapidly evolving, unfortunately, this is my opinion, an honest opinion, law would always seem to play catch up. So even where you have guidances, you have the legislation, you have all of those things in place, by the time those things are in place, technology has already moved and advanced. We have our guidances, we have our acts in place, but the truth of the matter is that those acts, those legislation, those guidances are there to govern organizations, are there to govern people, not the technology itself, not AI itself. When we look at the rapid evolvement of technology, it's not just about AI anymore. I know we've been talking about AI, but it's beyond AI. We're looking at blockchain, we're looking at quantum, we're looking at so many things at the moment. We're looking at synthetic biology at the moment. So there's a whole lot. And I think for me personally, it's not just looking at all of them in silo. We need to be looking at them all together in a convergence. And if we're looking at any legislation, it has to be a combination of all of this to be able to make sure that we manage any risks involved in holding data, processing data, deleting data, and everything. So really, to be honest, it's not. Unfortunately, law would have to keep up with technology. Technology is so far ahead. And when you look at the risks, you look at the negativity with all the deep fakes going on, with all the cyber crimes going on right now, law just has to, I don't know how it's going to make it its wings fly higher and become, broader. But there needs to be a lot of collaboration, a lot of communication, and a lot of multi-stakeholder partnership and working together to make it at par with technology. But technology is rapidly evolving. That's a wonderful question. It brings a smile to my to my face, because this is what I tell people every time. I think we take things for granted, and we're so trusting as well. The truth of the matter is that there is access to information. In as much as we say, how can we protect our data from public? Those that have access to your information have access to your information. The government has access to your information. Some organizations have access to your information. Some dark web have access to your information. So in as much as we want to protect it, we can only limit our exposure to risk. It doesn't necessarily mean that we can totally, protect our data, but at least we need to be seen to be doing what we need to do. So firstly, what I would say, take your privacy very seriously. Yes, I'm speaking to you, looking at me. Take your privacy very seriously. You don't have to post every single thing that happens to you on social media. Limit what you put out there. Be in control of your information. Be in control of what you hold. Don't post anything about your personal life if it's not necessary, if you're not a public figure. Even if you're a public figure, you still should be able to know what you post. Don't put things there about your children. You have the dark web, they harvest data. They use those children's data for different obscene things that you don't want to think about. Number one, your passwords. Make it unique, make it specific. Mix it up. Uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols. That's the starting point. And then you need to change it often. I know it can get really cumbersome because you have so many, apps, websites, organizations, resources that you need to have passwords for. And sometimes they force you to change your password often as well. But once you get into that habit, you become used to it. Another thing is multi-factor authentication. I know this happens nowadays in most organizations where you log in, you have your password, you have a PIN. You could have a token as well that generates a code for you, or an authenticator. So having those multi-layered authentication really helps. Encryption. Encrypt your devices, encrypt your data while it's at rest, whilst it's in transit. Make sure you have all those facilities in place. Also, like I mentioned earlier, what you put out there, please limit it. You don't need to put anything, because people can harvest data. We have what we call harvest now, decrypt later. And if your data gets into the hands of the wrong people, believe me, in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be having cyber wars. Now we have physical wars, but it's going to move from being physical to cyber. We are screaming about nuclear weapons now, but it's going to be much worse than nuclear weapons or physical wars. So please just limit what you put out there. The simple things, you leave your laptop, you leave your phones or any of your devices, lock them. They're very easy. Windows L for your laptop, and you just lock it so no one has access, to your passwords. And don't write your passwords carelessly. I know people say use my password manager to help you manage your password and things like that, but don't write them down in paper, in notebooks where people can easily have access to them. So these are things that we can practice intentionally. Also, I would also add all your apps. Review the apps that you have on your devices. Look at the permissions you've granted onto them. They don't need to have access to all your analytics. At the end of the day, they're still snooping around and gathering information, and you don't know how much they're going to be holding that data for as well. Be careful of what you put on, chat places. For example, your ChatGPT, your Claude AI, and all the Anthropic and all of those ones. Be careful what you put there, because they're all training models. And the truth of the matter is that there is no law governing the data being put in training models. So that means that they may be kept indefinitely. You don't know. And you don't know where that data is going to go to. So you just need to be conscious. You need to be intentional. You need to read up as well. Read up on what's going on. Google is your best friend at the moment. Go on Google. learn more information about this, but try and keep yourself secure. Make sure that you have in your mindset that safety by design, security by design is so, so important. And I want to believe that if you take all these steps, it should help you. This is a very, 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 it sounds funny, but it's a very important question. The truth of the matter is that you cannot sue an algorithm. It's not a living being, it's not an individual, it's not an organization. So you need to hold someone accountable. More often than not, it's the data controller. So the data controller is one that processes data, that holds data, that makes the decision, that has the decision-making power when it relates to the data that they hold and what they process and how they use it. And because you can't hold an algorithm liable, it would have to be the organization that has stepped forward to use or utilize that algorithm or that AI model or what have you. Now, in as much as we say that the organization is responsible, in some cases, although it's not the rule, it will be the exception, but in some cases, it goes a step further from the organizations. The board of directors could be held liable. The solicitor could be held liable. Certain professionals, depend on the jurisdiction, depend on the legal framework, will determine whether they are held liable or not. Sometimes some professional bodies would hold that professional individual liable because they were complicit, in the incident, and they knew and they covered up. In some cases, a data protection officer could also be held liable. So, no, we cannot hold the algorithm liable. And in some cases, it's the vendor as well, the third-party supplier of the model or the algorithm that may be held responsible, especially where the contract has stipulated that in the event of any such incident that they will be held liable. Now, it becomes a little bit messy where the contract is not clear as to who is liable when it comes to certain issues, certain things, and where there's no attribution. But where it's been clear within the contract and the agreement, then all of these people could be liable for such. But the default position is always the organization who is the data controller, and then obviously these other mentioned people or persons. Again, because of the current space that we are when it comes to technology and the cyber world at the moment, it's a little bit difficult because we can't say theft per se, because we don't have a broad legislation governing this, and that's what we are really advocating for, that governance needs to be at the forefront of all the technology that is being rapidly developed. We can't say that it's theft, because at the end of the day, people are voluntarily putting their data into these models. But at the same time, those that are building these models need also to be held accountable. Now, if there is no legislation to hold them accountable, then it becomes really difficult. So that's why, or that's where jurisdictions need to step up and start making sure that they put things in place. Now, the most robust legislation we have in the world right now is the EU AI Act. Obviously, the EU AI Act is targeting organizations, and telling them what they need to do, how they can manage the risks and things like that. It's not really targeting the technology, as it were. So, yes, we're putting data into all these models. My caveat will be careful. Think before you put any personal data into training models. Also, apart from personal data, those that work in different organizations as well, be careful when you put in your business information into these training models as well. Because the truth of the matter is this: without you knowing, a breach may have been committed because you've gone to share information that you shouldn't have shared, with a third party, and that is a data breach. If you've shared information or someone has had access to information that they shouldn't have, that's a breach. And I don't think people or organizations think of it or see it that way. So theft, for me, you have the school of thought that would want to call it theft, but I think at the moment I might call it quite a harsh word for now, just because of the space and how rapidly it's evolving and how each country wants to be at the forefront. US is trying to be at the forefront, China is trying to be at the forefront, Russia is in the mix, and you have the Asian countries as well, and everyone is just wanting to put something out there. Even Africa is not wanting to be left behind as well as a continent. So yes, we know that they are being fed with lots and lots of data, but please do not fall victim when you put those things out there, because again, there's no law governing those training models. Nothing at the moment, anyway. I think this ties into an earlier question as to how law is evolving with technology. The courts have no choice than to, step up, and they're trying their best. The truth of the matter is that obviously, in as much as AI has its own positives, it also has its own negatives, where you have a lot of fraud, as you've said, a lot of deep fakes, a lot of copying and just trying to change originals and make it look original and all of those kind of things. So what the courts are doing now would be to rely on forensics. So you have digital forensics, you have what we call watermarking, cryptographic provenances as well. They also rely on expert evidence, so they call experts to the courts to give evidence, to attest, to say whether this is true or this is not true, and things like that. Because with the way AI is, sometimes it's so difficult to differentiate the original from, the counter original, so to speak. So even though the courts are not there yet, but they are putting things in place, and as much as this keeps evolving, they need to also keep up with it. So those are the few ways that they are able to ensure that they are not being, stringed along. I think prior to AI anyway, you always had experts evidence, where you call experts to come and give evidence as to whether this is true or not. And now that we have forensics as well, data forensics is a good way. Then you have obviously the chain of custody analysis as well. So what's the chain in terms of who's had custody to a particular document or to a particular material, and whether in the exchange of that material has anything changed, so yeah, the courts have not been left behind in all of this. And I can see them, as technology moves forward, the courts will move forward as well in the digital world and cyber world. Some cases, yes, the default is that the organization, obviously, because they are the data controllers, so they are the ones that are meant to be responsible for the data. But in some cases, you also have professionals that can be held liable. I think I mentioned this earlier as well. In some cases, it's not the rule, but in some cases, especially where in an incident, maybe there's been a cover-up or expected, some expectations have been put on the professionals, so there's a duty of care and they've not met that such duty, definitely they'll be held responsible. So not just the organization, but the organization along with the directors could be personally liable, along with the professional person. So sometimes some may lose their jobs because of that, some will be fines, some may be suspension, some their professional bodies will deal with them. You could have sanctions, you could have corrective orders, you could have processing bans, so different things. But yes, definitely, in as much as organizations being the default data controller, would be held liable. In some cases, you have persons, individuals that can also be held liable in addition, along with the organization as well. What is happening now? I believe it's going to be more complex before it becomes clearer. That's just the honest truth. At the moment, we have the WIS going on. It's the Information Society Summit going on in Geneva right now. I recently just returned from the US. I was part of a group of women that went for a training program organized by the Global Cybersecurity Forum and United States Telecommunications and Training Institute, where they train women in cybersecurity leadership. And I was opportunity to meet women from 18 different nations, and believe you me, is getting complex. We were opportunity to, have site visits and go to different states and everything. With the way technology is advancing, it's going to be so complex before it can be clear. Let's be reminded that we have so many jurisdictions with their different laws. US alone is so fragmented. You have different states within the US. You have California laws having its own. You have Illinois having its own. Chicago, every one of them having their own different laws. And then you look at UK, you look at EU, it will be complex because, number one, AI is not the only game changer now. You have blockchain, you have synthetic biology, you have quantum. With the way quantum is going, if we do not take care, it will be so advanced that everyone will be running after it. But the beautiful thing is that in as much as they are really, really advancing, all of them really can enhance each other. In the few years to come, it could be that quantum may be curing an illness, who knows? And that's how advanced all of this, new technology will be. But it will be complex first because we don't have a universal legislation at the moment. The EU AI Act has kind of set a foundation because it's the most robust at the moment, but it's not really, encompassed every single thing that needs to, because technology is evolving. So what would probably happen is that they would have to keep amending, adapting, to make sure that they are up to date with the way technology has also advanced as well. But I will not, mince words here. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. It would be very complex. There will be a lot of unclear, paths. We could have a lot of, negativity as well in terms of harm, wars, cyber wars, and things like that before everything then becomes calm, and then we are then able to proceed carefully with governance and accountability and checks and balances. But I think the good thing is that there is conversation going on, there is collaboration going on, there's communication going on, and everyone is coming together to work together. When we look at things that we are enjoying now, those are things that we were not at the table when they were being, spoken about and implemented. But AI and anything associated with technology now is one thing that everyone is at the table now, and they're talking about it because it affects us. It's going to affect the generations yet unborn, and we need to make sure that we do it responsibly, and we do it compassionately as well. And it requires inclusivity. So before it can become clear, it would require inclusivity where everyone is at the table. So you have women, you have children, you have the older generation, you have organizations, you have the public sector, the private sector, you have civil societies. It has to be a multi-stakeholder engagement. Right. I would say that technology does not create accountability, and compliance does not mean documentation makes you safe. So the two in one, which also means the same thing, really. Simply because you have things in place, you have your systems in place, you have some certifications in place, you have your policies in place because the legislation demands and mandates you to do it, does not mean that there's good governance in place, does not mean that you are being held accountable. So I would encourage organizations, I would encourage individuals that what you practice is very important, not just the box ticking exercise or the legal tick box that we tend to want to do. Let's go beyond the paper. Let's go into the practice. Let's go into the culture. Let's go into how we want to impact and change the lives of those that we work with, those that we network with, and how we can make the world a safer place, not just for ourselves, for the children, for the younger ones. So don't just do things simply because you want to do it. Do it because you want to make a change. Make sure you have privacy by design. Make sure you have security by design. Make sure you have trust by design. Make sure you have AI by design. What that simply means is that from the word get-go, from the start of any initiative, from the start of any business, project, whatever, make sure that everyone that you need to be at the table is there. Let your information governance specialist, your data protection officer, let them be at the table, starting everything together so that you don't become a reactive organization or individual, you become a proactive organization and individual. That would be my say on that, the no nonsense one. Even though I'm smiling, it was no nonsense. It's been an amazing time here on Expressions with Raphael. Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed every single moment, every single second. Thank you so, so much. And for everyone out there, please, please, please do subscribe to this wonderful channel. This is the channel to be, where you learn, you hear, and you must act on it. You just don't hear. Be a doer of what you hear as well. And don't stop here. Let it be information sharing. That's how we can connect, So please share the word. Information governance is so important. Data protection is so important. Security is so important. So whatever you've learned here, make sure you take it on board. Protect yourself. Make sure you practice what you've heard. Share with your loved ones. Share with your colleagues. Share with your friends. Put it on your social media. Put it on your statuses, Share the link as well. Make sure that this channel becomes your go-to channel, because believe you me, there's a whole lot of content that will benefit you and benefit your network on this channel. So Expressions by Raphael, let it be something that stays on your lips, and please do share. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Let's make the world a safe place. We can do it together. It's not a solo work. It's a collective work, and we can do it together. So stay tuned, stay glued, and make sure you share this link.